Help me hit 7,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. Thank you. I never thought skipping an anniversary could feel so freeing. My name's Ethan. I'm 38, and for the past decade, I've been married to Clara. We met in college. She was vibrant, hilarious, full of energy, the kind of person who could light up a room just by walking in. I was quieter, a bit awkward, but steady. People called me dependable, which apparently Clara found attractive. For the first few years, we had the kind of love stories people scribble in greeting cards. Little surprises, inside jokes, weekend trips, the works. I remember the time I stayed up all night making a scrapbook of our first year together, and she cried. Not from sadness, but from happiness. Those were the days that felt infinite. But life, as it often does, slowly reshaped us. Work grew more demanding, bills piled up, our schedules never aligned, and somewhere along the line, the sparks dimmed. I tried to notice the little things, to stay connected, but it felt like Clara's attention was slipping through my fingers. The first few times she rolled her eyes at me for joking or brushing past my touch, I brushed it off. Stress, I told myself. She's busy, tired, overworked. Then came the rejections. Not dramatic fights or shouting matches, just the subtle, cutting dismissals that gnawed at me over time. I'd ask to cuddle on the couch, and she'd shrug me off. I'd compliment her outfit, and she'd respond with a distracted, "Thanks, whatever." Even when I tried to plan something special, like a quiet evening after work, she'd cancel last minute or forget entirely. After a month of this, I reached my limit. It wasn't anger, not really, it was clarity. I realized I didn't owe anyone my happiness. Not even someone I loved once more than life itself. That's when I decided to skip our anniversary. I told myself it wasn't spite. It was self-respect. On the morning of our anniversary, I woke up, had my coffee, dressed in my usual casual way, and left for work. I didn't even glance at my phone until mid-morning, when it vibrated incessantly. Clara's name flashed across the screen. Red letters of fury I could almost feel searing through the glass. "Where are you?" her text read. I didn't reply immediately. I stared at the message for a moment, feeling the old pang of guilt, the residue of hope that maybe she'd finally understand. But I reminded myself of the past month. The nights I tried to connect, the gentle rejections, the cold shoulders. Every single time I reached out, she pushed me away. Every single time I felt smaller, invisible, like a shadow in the house I used to feel whole in. Finally, I typed back, "I don't celebrate disrespect." It felt heavier than any argument we'd ever had. Simple, cold, factual. Not a plea, not an apology. Just truth. The rest of the day was a blur. I worked, avoided my phone, and let the silence hang over me. But by evening, the text started again. More furious this time, shorter, sharper. "Ethan, answer me." "Clara, we need to talk." "Are you serious right now?" I ignored them all. Instead, I drove to Jasper, my old friend's house. Jasper had been through his own share of relationship chaos, and I knew he'd understand. Sitting in his living room, sipping on coffee that had gone cold, I explained everything, from the subtle rejections to my decision to skip the anniversary. Jasper shook his head. "You didn't overreact. Sometimes the anniversary isn't the day that matters. It's the way you're treated every day." His words hit me harder than I expected. That's exactly it. This wasn't about flowers or a dinner or a card. It was about a month of repeated dismissals, about feeling invisible, about realizing that love without respect isn't love at all. Later that night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a call. Clara's number. I debated ignoring it, but something told me to answer. Her voice was sharp, trembling somewhere between rage and disbelief. "Ethan, where are you?" I stayed calm. I let a pause stretch long enough to be felt. Then I said, simply, "Clara, I don't celebrate disrespect." There was silence on the line. Then a deep, incredulous breath. You're serious?" "Yes." She didn't know what to say after that. Not immediately. And in that silence, I realized something important. It wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about yelling or proving a point. It was about reclaiming my dignity. And in that moment, I finally felt it. The first trace of peace I'd had in weeks. Clara didn't speak for a moment. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating, but I didn't rush to fill it. I had learned over the past month that sometimes, the quiet carries more weight than words. Finally, she muttered, I can't believe you just walked out like this. Our anniversary. I interrupted gently but firmly. Clara, this isn't about a date on a calendar. It's about how I've felt for the past month. Ignored, dismissed, rejected. You can't act like everything's fine one day and demand celebration the next. Respect isn't optional. It's not something you can turn on for a few hours. Her voice cracked slightly, the anger now mixing with disbelief and something softer. Hurt, maybe, or realization. Ethan, I didn't mean to. I held my breath. For years, I had swallowed excuses, brushed off indifference, hoped things would get better on their own. But now, I had no patience left for half-truths or casual dismissals. No, Clara, this isn't about intention anymore. It's about action. And your actions these past weeks have been clear. She was silent again. I could hear her breathing through the phone, uneven, hesitant. Somewhere in that pause, I felt the shift. I realized I wasn't pleading. I wasn't trying to force reconciliation. I was merely stating a fact. My self-respect couldn't coexist with ongoing disrespect. The conversation ended shortly after, but the silence that followed was nothing like the heavy, suffocating quiet of the past month. It was liberating. I hung up, sat back in my chair, and let it sink in. No anger, no bitterness, just clarity. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. That night, I walked home. The streets were quiet, the city lights reflecting on the wet pavement from an earlier drizzle. Normally, I would have felt anxious about coming back to a house filled with tension, a spouse simmering in anger or resentment. But not tonight. I felt a strange calm, a lightness I hadn't known I could feel while still being married. I walked into an empty living room, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Clara wasn't there. Maybe she'd gone to a friend's house, or maybe she was pacing outside, frustrated. It didn't matter. What mattered was that I no longer carried the weight of trying to earn affection that was being withheld arbitrarily. I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window, looking out at the quiet neighborhood. A week later, Clara came home. I didn't hide, I didn't avoid her. I simply walked past her in the hallway, acknowledging her presence but not reacting to the tension she radiated. She tried to initiate conversation, her voice softer now, less sharp. Ethan, can we talk about what happened? I nodded politely. We can, Clara, but not like before. If we talk, it has to be about respect and understanding, not blame or excuses. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. For the first time, I realized she had been used to me absorbing her frustration without comment, without confrontation. That pattern had ended, and the frustration she brought into the house now had no place to land. Over the next few days, the dynamic subtly shifted. Clara started noticing things she had ignored. The way I handled our schedules, how I quietly maintained the house, how I carried myself with calm assurance rather than desperate attempts to reconnect. She asked me small questions, tentative and cautious, testing if the Ethan she once knew still existed. He did, but he was no longer a man willing to tolerate disrespect in silence. It wasn't revenge. I didn't manipulate or punish her. I simply chose not to participate in her disregard anymore. The house felt different. The air felt lighter, and I felt stronger. Something fundamental had shifted, not between us necessarily, but within me. I had drawn a line, and for the first time I honored it without guilt. A few weeks later, our anniversary passed again. This time I didn't even check my phone. Clara sent a text in the morning, a simple, almost neutral, happy anniversary. I read it, smiled faintly, and replied, "Thank you." No guilt, no expectation, just acknowledgement. It was small, but it felt significant. I realized that sometimes love isn't about grand gestures or dates on the calendar. Sometimes It's about standing firm in your dignity, about showing yourself the respect you deserve, even if it means disappointing others. That clarity changed how I viewed our marriage, and perhaps more importantly, how I viewed myself. Looking back now, I don't regret skipping that anniversary. It was a declaration, a quiet boundary drawn firmly in the sand. And in that act, I discovered something I hadn't realized I was missing: the power of self-respect. I understood then that love, to be meaningful, must coexist with respect. Otherwise, it becomes hollow, a ceremony without substance, a celebration without connection. Clara and I continued living together for some months after, but the shift was permanent. The dynamic had changed, subtly but irreversibly. I no longer chased affection. I no longer begged for acknowledgement. I simply existed as my own man, and in that space the truth became clear. Respect is the foundation, and anything less is not worth sacrificing yourself for. That day, and every anniversary since, reminds me of the quiet power of standing firm. I may have skipped one date, but in doing so, I celebrated something far more important: my dignity, my clarity, and my unwavering commitment to myself.